big debate in international relations, what is influence. There's hard and there's soft power in many ways. So if we look at the hard power, and that is for me military and economics, I think the three most important countries in the Gulf are Saudi Arabia, UAE and Qatar. And they have been since at least the Arab Spring. Saudi Arabia has a lot of leverage just by the size of the country, 32 million inhabitants. Despite their economic crises and their financial problems that they have internally, they still have a lot of financial assets that they can spend. So there is a lot of economic power there. They have a huge military as well, the Saudis. The problem with their military, however, is that it is not fit for purpose. It's not fit to actually neither to provide defense for the country, nor provide an expeditionary capability. Again, I think that is very important to understand. So if you look at the pure numbers, Saudi Arabia has a big military, but they can't use this military. We see this in Yemen, which is a relatively small conflict. And even there, the Saudis are bogged down in a crisis that they can't get out of on their own. So militarily, they have problems in different forces integration, so integrating the air force with the ground forces, coordinating efforts, coordinating military operations is something that the Saudis are very bad at. In terms of communication, there are a lot of flaws, and this Yemen crisis, this Yemen war has somewhat brought this to the forefront. That's why they've asked the Emiratis to help them out. There was always, from the beginning, it was clear to the Saudis that they couldn't do anything in Yemen without the support of the UAE. Now, the UAE is a relatively small country, and they're very much punching above their weight. The Emiratis have probably the biggest, not the biggest, but the most effective military in the region. I would say that after the Israeli military, the UAE military is probably the most effective one in this part of the world, but in terms of size and impact. The problem here now is that the Emiratis have overused their military strength across the region. So they're now in Libya, they're in Yemen, they're in the Horn of Africa and Somalia, and in other countries around, and even in Sudan and Djibouti. So in terms of size, the capacity of the UAE military is not big enough to actually allow them to do all this. So what they do is they rely on local proxies and surrogates, of which they sometimes they lose control, as they do in Yemen, which then provides other problems. So the UAE military is good, but they're punching way above their weight in terms of the size of the country. But if it came to a military conflict over Qatar, the UAE would have the capacity and the capability to go in and take the emir out. That was the plan initially. The Qatari military is in a process of restructuring. For many years they've been neglected, and only over the last 5 years the Qataris really massively invested into the capability of their military. But a capability of a military is not just about buying tanks and buying platforms, but it's also investing into the capacity of the people, investing into the education of the people in the military. And that's what the Qataris are doing now. I'd say they're still lagging behind the UAE in many ways, but they're able to fill that gap increasingly. But anyway, it's not so much about military power. If you look at the UAE and Qatar, their biggest asset, I would say, is soft power.